Hey everybody, and welcome to a very special Halloween edition of RCT2 Reviews. Today we are looking at Fright Nights by Phatage. This is an old map, and actually may be the first a lot of you are seeing this. This is actually 17 years old, and it's still a pretty impressive coaster. I've actually left it paused so we can unpause it here and start it up. So this is actually a 5-minute long layout, and we're going to keep the window here because it's actually a little bit of a challenge to follow it some of the time. So um, we're doing the first part of this sort of on the ground, and then we'll merge it into some track a little bit later on and take a look. So first things first is we're launching up this lighthouse. So this is the lighthouse stairs, and then back down and kind of spinning underground, and then back out and through some buildings here. Then we have our drop and return here. So the little sign here says the ride is far from over. And it is true as it heads back into the village to do some stuff kind of off in the rest of this space. So this was an attempt at the Quest for the Best Extreme contest that New Element ran back in 2005. And it was unfinished for that contest, and thankfully he went back and finished it here a little bit later, and we are blessed with what at the time was probably one of the most hacked roller coasters that the game had ever seen. This was pretty mind-blowing for the era, and honestly still holds up pretty well. So let's look at some of the village. So the architecture is probably the, I'll say, weakest point of the map, although hard to necessarily apply weakness to what's going on here. So we have this kind of nice little plaza entry here, little barn, and just some various bits and pieces. There's a couple of stalls here. So we have the general store selling garlic, selling silver bullets, and selling holy water, which is kind of clever, and just a lot of other little details and things like that. So we're currently kind of tooling around in this swamp that's full of bones and little frozen fairies and skulls and things. But now we head over this way with a spin around this little ritual site and kick off a little bit here in just a minute. So this is what you would call an adventure ride, and this was a sort of popular thing back in the early New Element days, where you had coasters that just kind of went off and did stuff. And this one is again interesting in the way that it merges a more traditional coaster and an adventure ride. I actually really do like these buildings here. They're sort of just interesting in general. So, but anyway, let's pick this up because we get this fantastic launch up and over, and then down the gigantic drop with the spiral. Really nice track merging there as well. And then up underneath we have the Kraken here, which is very nicely synced to jump across. I also love the use of the Rapids Ride waterfalls for all the tunnels here in the water. It's a super cool effect, and honestly, that still holds up really, really well. This was an era well before the B&M custom supports, so we don't have those. And you might have missed in there a roll behind that cliffside, and then we have this other giant tower over here. Big drop back down. And you can see now why I'm keeping this one open here on the side, just because there's so much going on. It's a little hard to follow. And there we are back up into the brakes. So that is the coaster itself, which is about a 5-minute long ride, which is pretty impressive. And we have all these great details. There's this interesting sunken pumpkin here with all the obelisks around it. I really love this kind of procession up to the village with the pathway cut out from the rock face itself. Really, really nice. I like that quite a bit. Just looking at the map in general, now this is some pretty nice landscaping here. I love the way that all the bushes sort of flow down the hill from everything. And then the mansion itself, which I was talking about just before this one launched and did its thing. I didn't want to miss that, but there's actually some pretty cool details just through this whole thing, used very nicely. And the launch track itself with the little tiny skulls, oh, they're very nicely put together. Our little ghost train here that's just cruising around. Turn a couple of ways so we can see some other bits and pieces. There's this terraced seating area, or the well, not seating area, I guess lying area, since it's a graveyard. And then the spinning tunnels enter and exit on this side. I do love the signs, like the sign that's just laughing here. Fantastic. And a very old school approach to um, the game, where you did a lot with the standard in-game signage. So I do like that. We spent a lot of time looking at other things while the coaster was cruising around in the swamp here, but it is worth looking at and pretty cool to see. You can see a little spinning tunnel here. I think what I always appreciated about these rides was kind of trying to figure out where it was going to go, and kind of see where the slopes are and where the cleared spots are. Um, but kind of watching it go in all sorts of different directions. Here we are as it wraps around. There was a witch's cauldron here and some bones and things. We go under the water here. Hopefully everybody holds their breath. And then back across, and then off into the little ritual site here before it goes into the building, and then out. But let's take another look at this tower too, using the impulse coaster track, which is very nice. And these supports are great. Not necessarily realistic, but just really impressively put together. A lot of pretty cool stuff. But I do kind of like the footer attempts here with the big footer and the bolt pattern kind of going through there. Kind of clever. Big and clunky, kind of feels like the Duplo version of coaster supports, but it's cool though. I do like how that was put together. And then a tower on this side, which we didn't get to view from this side before. Again, got some impulse track further up. Glitchy as hell, but that was, that was a thing. And you really didn't get rid of the other track. You just sort of overlaid this on top. It was a pain in the rear to do really anything beyond this. I mean, this itself was a pain to begin with, but it was, it's one of those things that we take for granted now in Open RCT, that a lot of the hacks that you see here in the forwards and backwards and things like that, that was not an everyday thing, and not a thing that somebody who didn't at least have a fair bit of knowledge of the game could do. So it's certainly says something, I think, to the kind of difficulty behind a map like this. Certainly more impressive, I think, once you can kind of understand what it was like at the time, when it was a lot more difficult to do some of these hacks, and just to create something like this. So definitely very old school throughout. Well back in the channel, probably over a year ago, we reviewed Six Flags Worlds of Excitement, which was also by Phatage, and that was sort of the kind of preeminent realism of the time, and he was certainly a realistically minded builder, which I think is interesting on this map, where it's more fantasy than anything. But from comments from him, 17 years ago, was that this coaster portion was meant to be a realistic-ish kind of accelerator coaster from Intamin. Granted, he acknowledged that it was much longer, and certainly sort of a hybrid with hydraulic launch and an LSM launch in the middle. But he did intend this to be at least somewhat realistic, if not, with the whole map being a little bit all over the place. But certainly a cool design, and hopefully one, if you haven't seen it before, you found it interesting. I will put a download link in the description of this video if you would like to take a look at this map yourself. I do recommend it, and some of the other ones of this era. If you'd like to see me do more reviews of parks from around this time, say 15 plus years ago, definitely let me know. There's a lot of good stuff way back when that I think is worth looking into, so I do want to highlight some of those over time. But certainly figured this was an appropriate map to look at for Halloween. So happy Halloween, and until next time, thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye now.